Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a pretty extraordinary source. It's a first-hand account from someone claiming they were just flung into this fantastical anime-style world.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And not just into the world, but into the body of a teenage girl. So our mission here is to really unpack this story, pull out the key insights about identity, about unexpected power, and this world where, like, old school fantasy meets some surprising modern stuff.
Exactly. And it's such a unique look at what happens with sudden transmigration, where this totally mundane past life slams right into a bewildering new reality.
Yeah.
It forces our subject to confront who they were, who they are now, what they can actually do.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about the whole concept of self when the context changes so radically.
Okay, let's get right into it. The awakening. Our narrator wakes up, stark room, totally unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, you'd think it's a dream, right? Or some hallucination.
Of course, that's the first reaction.
But it sinks in pretty fast. This is real. And crucially, they're in a completely different body. The room description is quite basic. White walls, wooden floor, a study table, not many books, basic clothes.
Right, and that raises the immediate question, what kind of body are we talking about?
Exactly.
The source says, unbelievably short and scholarly. Definitely a teenaged anime girl.
Which must be so strange because the narrator identifies as a grown adult, right? With this history of serious academic achievement. Columbia grad, spelling bee, science Olympiad.
Yes, and they find this new body deeply disorienting, annoying even. They mention things like teenage girl hormones and these instinctive reactions like pouting.
Yeah.
It suggests this integration with the new body, maybe not entirely willing. Like identity isn't just mental, it's tied to the physical, the biological.
That's fascinating. And then we learn about their past life. They remember a career just starting, being well-read, and some really poignant stuff like their mom's sacrifices after their dad died in the World Trade Center attack.
Yeah, that adds a real layer of depth. And there's this mention of a long-term relationship, 4 to 6 years, where they apparently did their partner's exams, even their graduate thesis.
Wow. In a field they supposedly knew nothing about.
Right. It paints this picture of someone incredibly capable, maybe too self-sacrificing. The text says their soul and dignity had been beaten down and crushed before all this happened.
So you connect that to the bigger picture. It's a huge identity crisis, obviously.
Huge, but maybe also a kind of liberation. The old self, the one hitting the gym regularly, is gone, trapped in this unathletic body. But maybe they're also free from those old burdens.
Interesting take.
They're thrown into this world that's familiar in terms of fantasy tropes, elves, dwarves, talking animals, all that.
Right.
But utterly foreign in its immediate danger. It's like a clean slate, but a really chaotic one.
And then into this chaos walks Lori, or One-chan, older sister.
Yep, the Azure Wind. Cheerful, enthusiastic, instantly lays out their new life goal.
Adventurers, take down the demon lord, reach S rank.
And the narrator's immediate thought is just, oh, hell no.
Classic. So Lori doesn't waste any time, gets them a quest straight away.
Yeah, a B-rank delivery. Take a magical gemstone to the royal palace, 200 gold coins. Sounds simple.
Sounds simple, but you just know it won't be, right?
Well, not in this reality, no. And the journey itself starts weirdly. They're on a cart pulled by these struthids.
Describe those.
Okay, giant birds, like twice human size, bald heads, spiky feathers, white eyes, wicked teeth.
Okay, definitely not your average pigeons.
Not at all. It immediately signals, this world has its own very strange rules.
And while all this is happening, our narrator is trying to figure things out.
Yes.
Tries magic, thinks, fireball, that should be easy.
Nothing.
Zip, nada. Lori just tells him to practice your magic.
So this is where we learn the narrator, or rather Alice Liddell, the person whose body they're in.
Is supposed to be a prodigy mage.
Right. But her family fell from grace. Some father's catastrophe, huge debts, tens of thousands in gold pieces.
So there's this massive tension, the prodigy who can't consciously cast a spell.
Exactly. It hints at something deeper, maybe uncontrolled power, which definitely comes out later.
Oh, yeah. First encounter with bandits, the Picoroso gang. Beastmen included dog heads, jackal heads.
Standard fantasy fare, almost. But then things get messy.
Lori jumps into the fight, handles herself pretty well, but it's the narrator, Alice, who causes the real chaos. accidentally.
How accidentally?
Well, they tasted ale for the first time in this body, and suddenly this drunk magic kicks in.
It's mug magic.
The card just goes, noom wind blades, right into the attackers, sets 7 buildings on fire, bandits end up missing their limbs. It's mayhem.
Wow. Okay, so that's the aha moment. Immense power, zero control, especially with alcohol involved.
Totally. And it leads to this really intense night afterwards. Terrifying hallucinations.
Yeah, the glowing hands, fighting spectral creatures, cats, frogs. It sounds like a total psychological breakdown almost.
Or maybe the subconscious power just bursting out. They even argue with a ghostly reflection that calls them a joke.
It's definitely the mind struggling to cope, manifesting that internal conflict and maybe those latent powers.
So after that disaster in Rivershire, they head to the royal capital. And this city, it's something else.
How so?
It's this incredible mix. You've got Spanish galleons with cannons and anti-air ballistae,
Okay.
but also zebra-like horses, weird bicycles, even like steam-powered hoverboards.
Steam-powered hoverboards,
Seriously. And the architecture blends golden ratio European styles with silver ratio Asian geometries. It's unique.
That's fascinating, that blend of magic and technology.
Mm.
It really makes the world feel different, doesn't it? It challenges those standard fantasy tropes.
It really does. So the narrator checks out a magic shop, learns about wands being easier for beginners, helping channel core mana focus.
How they manage anything.
A tiny levitation parlor trick. That's it. Still miles away from this prodigy reputation.
Right. And meanwhile, things are getting darker at the Adventurers Guild.
Yeah, they overhear stuff, adventurers disappearing, C and B rankers, someone getting their legs taken out.
Oof. So it's not all fun and games, this adventuring life. There's real danger, hidden stuff going on.
Definitely. And the narrator spots these suspicious wooden boxes being moved at the guild. Gut feeling says something's wrong.
And Lori?
Lori, being Lori, is convinced something's definitely off and just charges in.
Of course she does.
But it's Alice, the narrator, who does something really shocking. Again, unconsciously.
Okay, what happens this time? More fire.
No, something weirder. They confront this gang leader, Zlatan, and the whole scene shifts. It becomes ghoulish red and hazy.
Like visually. For everyone.
Apparently, ghosts appear screaming witches' laughter, and the narrator's face projects into this, like, abstract, laughing image with a cutout mouth.
Whoa, that's intense.
It's described as a group hallucination, pure psychological warfare. The bandits just... Well, the text says they collectively piss themselves.
Okay, so not physical power, but this raw, terrifying mental projection. Fear as a weapon. That's a different kind of strength, isn't it?
Totally. But afterwards, Lori is frustrated. She basically accuses the narrator of losing control, saying, I've never seen you struggle with something as basic as a monobolt.
Ah, so that confirms it for the narrator. They don't have Alice's skills or memories.
Exactly. It brings that whole disconnect right out into the open.
But Lori still believes in her, right? Despite the conscious struggles.
Oh, absolutely. Lori says something like, I'm fast, I'm strong, good with a sword, but I'm not the one who could burn down a town. That's your talent, Alice Jan.
Wow. So Lori sees the potential, the raw power, even if Alice can't control it yet. It highlights that gap between reputation and current reality. A struggle many people face, actually, just maybe not with magic.
True. So on the way back, the narrator keeps trying to practice. Just a simple manibolt.
How does that go?
Badly. Cursing, spells going wide, scaring the poor Struthids again. They admit their only reliable skills are that levitation trick and maybe a magic musket shot. The fundamentals just aren't there, consciously.
And then things get even weirder.
Don't they always? They pick up a retired adventurer, a friend of Lori's.
Okay.
And during the next ambush, because of course there's another ambush, this woman, dressed in what Alice calls wuxia style.
Like Chinese martial arts fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. She shapeshifts into a wolf.
Whoa. Okay, shapeshifters now, too.
And other allies pop up. Hi-ha, a guy with brown bunny ears casting fire, and a talking, demonic-looking bear.
This world just keeps getting richer and stranger. It's moving beyond standard tropes.
Definitely. So in the middle of this big fight, Lori's using light magic from her sword. The wolf woman, who we learn is named Dana, is literally eating the demonic bear after it's defeated.
Eating it. Okay. Metal.
Right. Amidst all that, the narrator, Alice, finally, under all this pressure, successfully casts a manibolt, dissolves a huge 3-headed frog monster.
Ugh. A breakthrough. Small step, maybe, but huge for them. Conscious control.
Yes, but then comes the biggest reveal. Dinah, the wolf woman, turns to Alice and says, and this is why you're taking my place, Alice. Screw this life.
Taking her place, what does that mean?
Before they can even process that, this elf appears. Bright orange hair, ridiculous top hat.
Sounds like a leprechaun.
Huh! The narrator thinks Lucky Charms mascot. And this elf says they've been eager for this moment since we heard about your graduation. And then ask Alice directly, join our little group.
Okay, hold on. Graduation.
Yeah.
Taking someone's place. A group waiting for her. This sounds predetermined.
Exactly. It throws this huge wrench into everything. Maybe this wasn't random. Maybe Alice, or whoever Alice is, has some kind of destiny the narrator just stumbled into.
Wow. So the transmigration might be part of a bigger plan.
Seems like it. So this whole deep dive, we've seen this protagonist thrown into a new body, grappling with a lost identity in a world full of magic, weird tech, constant danger, and this unfolding mystery about who they even are supposed to be.
Yeah, the core struggle isn't just survival, is it? It's about understanding this fractured self, dealing with these immense, uncontrolled powers. It really shows how challenging it is to adapt when your whole sense of self is just gone. Or maybe not gone, but buried under someone else's history and potential.
So for you listening, think about it. If you suddenly found yourself in someone else's life with powers you didn't get, how would you define yourself? Would you try to reclaim who you were, even if that past self felt, beaten down? Or would you embrace this chaotic new potential?
And what if everything that made you you, before your smarts, your achievements, suddenly felt useless in this new context that demands something totally different, like raw magic you can't consciously use?
Yeah.
How do you bridge that gap between the person you were and the person or the role you seem destined to become?
It's a lot to think about. A truly disorienting deep dive.
Okay, imagine this. You wake up, right? And you're suddenly in this completely different world, but it gets weirder.
Oh, yeah.
You're not just you anymore. You're like a literal anime character. Seriously.
Wow, okay. Anime character.
And then bam, all your skills, everything you knew, your identity, just gone. Wiped clean.
So like total amnesia about who you were.
Kind of, but more focused on skills. You've got this massive, magical potential, apparently, but you can barely use it. Think maybe 2 basic spells left.
Ouch.
And just to top it all off, you've inherited this huge pile of debt. Welcome to your new life.
That sounds like quite the nightmare scenario, doesn't it? But that's precisely the situation our main character Alice finds herself in.
Exactly. She's plunked down into this world that's, well, it's vibrant, sure, but also really dangerous.
And our sources really paint a picture of her struggle, grappling with losing her past, this totally new identity.
Yeah, and the really fascinating part is how she adapts. The ingenious ways she figures out how to survive, and even more than that, to actually make something of her situation.
Right. It's not just about getting by.
So our mission today in this deep dive is to really unpack Alice's journey. We'll look at that initial shock, the terrifying moment she faces.
And how she becomes this super resourceful innovator in a world full of magic and, actual monsters.
We'll dig into the details that make her story, well, frankly, pretty compelling. And maybe see what it tells us about finding purpose when things get really unexpected. Let's get into it.
So when Alice first, comes to in this new reality, the visual aspect alone is just woo!
Yeah, how so?
She finds herself physically changed into what the sources describe as a cel-shaded 2.5-dimensional anime character.
Like flat-looking.
Sort of, like she stepped out of a cartoon, but the world around her isn't quite the same style. And the monsters, they're described as uncanny valley shimmering CGI.
Weird. That contrast must be really jarring.
Yeah.
Instantly tells you something's off.
Totally. But, the core problem, the real kicker, is much deeper than how she looks.
The magic thing you mentioned.
Exactly. She has these large mana reserves. Basically, a huge amount of raw magical power. Sounds great, right?
Yeah, you'd think.
Except all her actual magic. The high-level spells, the complex formulas, her understanding of mana theory, even potion recipes. Everything she apparently spent a decade learning.
Gone.
Completely wiped, just gone. She's left with only 2 super basic things. A simple mana bolt, like a little energy zap, and levitation.
Wow. That's devastating.
Yeah.
Especially if he was a powerful mage.
It's a massive psychological hit. I mean, imagine being a master craftsman, then waking up only knowing how to hold a hammer, maybe.
Right.
She feels totally like a fish out of water, stuck in a body that isn't mine, dealing with debts that aren't mine.
And you mentioned a pain.
Yeah, there's this persistent phantom pain in her neck, too, like an echo of some really bad near-death thing with a monster before this, whatever this is. It really drills home how much our identity is tied up in what we know and what we can do.
And She doesn't exactly hit it off with everyone immediately, does she? There's someone named Lori.
Lori, yeah. Supposedly her sister in this world, and Alice is initially pretty ticked off at her.
Why is that?
She feels Lori's been reckless, dragging her into these high-pressure situations, getting her roughed up by bandits. It's a really tense start to this forced sisterhood. Lots of fear and resentment from Alice's side.
Okay, so she's vulnerable, confused, and kind of angry.
And then to make things worse, some elf named Tarrant tries to recruit her for his esteemed heroes group while she's clearly distressed. Like, read the room, dude.
Oh, great timing.
Terrible timing. But it's important to see Lori's side, too. Even though Alice is frustrated, Lori seems genuinely concerned. She even says how losing her magic would be devastating for the Alice she knew.
Ah, so Lori recognizes the scale of the loss for the original Alice.
Exactly, which adds another layer. And hovering over all this personal drama,
There's always a bigger threat.
always, a looming demonic invasion led by a demon lord who specifically targets the top-tier adventurers, the rank S, A, and B folks, the heavy hitters.
So the whole world is kind of on edge.
Pretty much, which makes Alice's predicament even more precarious.
And that danger doesn't stay distant for long, I take it.
Not at all. Things get very real, very fast when Alice and Lori are attacked.
Dahu.
A masked mage named Mike Harlan. He's a dark elf and works directly for the Demon Lord, and he uses some really weird dimensional magic.
Nasty stuff. Was it just
Yeah.
random targeting adventurer?
Yeah, it's personal. Turns out Mike Harlan wants revenge. Lori's group nearly killed him years ago, and they did kill his brother.
Okay, so a vendetta.
A serious one. Plus, taking out high-level adventurers like Lori helps the Demon Lord's overall plan. So Mike Harlan's a big deal, a rank-a-hunt target himself.
And this is where we see Lori step up.
Oh, big time. When Alice gets hurt in the attack, Lori just snaps.
Uh-oh.
The description is intense. Her literal eyes lit by flame.
Whoa.
She goes ballistic, unleashes these incredibly brutal, efficient combat moves, shatters a guy's leg, gouges out another's eye with a kitchen cleaver she had.
With a cleaver. Okay, that's
Whoa,
visceral.
Totally. It's this raw, fierce display of protection. Shocking, but it definitely changes how Alice sees her.
I bet. And do others get involved?
Yes, thankfully. Some allies arrive. Dinah, who's a cat girl, very agile, and Friar Dodgson, a birdman who actually saves Alice's life by throwing up a magical barrier just in time.
Catgirl. Birdman. Okay, got it. Any others?
There's also Hi-Ha, a rabbit man who's part of their core group, too.
Whole crew.
A very diverse crew, yeah. And after all that chaos, the fight, there's a really important moment between Alice and Lori.
The aftermath.
Lori gives this really heartfelt apology, says she messed up, pushed Alice too hard, disrespected her boundaries, vows to do better.
That takes courage.
It does. And she says this really powerful thing. It's you and me against the world.
That must have landed differently for Alice.
Huge difference. It allows Alice to be vulnerable. She finally admits just how terrified she is, feeling like she's watching this slow-motion train wreck.
What's the train wreck? Just the invasion.
That, definitely. And the pressure about her magic, but also this massive financial time bomb. Remember the debt?
Oh, right. How bad is it?
Nearly 11,000 gold. They're facing eviction. It's another huge stressor.
Yikes. So, invasion, magic expectations, and potential homelessness. No wonder she's terrified.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Alice apparently comes from a past life with a cold family, maybe even an abusive relationship.
Okay.
So this sisterly affection from Lori, this sudden fierce loyalty and apology, it feels completely alien to her.
In a good way.
In a deeply comforting way. It's unexpected, but it helps her find her feet emotionally. It's this connection that becomes her anchor in all the chaos.
That's a really key turning point then. Finding that emotional support.
Absolutely crucial. And it fuels this big shift in Alice's thinking.
Oh, so.
She starts to realize dwelling on the lost combat magic, that's not helping. That life, that power, it's gone.
So she pivots.
She pivots hard, decides to focus on practical, support-based magic instead. She starts thinking, okay, let's embrace this girl's identity now. See where this path leads.
Interesting. So less battle mage, more something else.
Exactly. She finds this book of household spell work like magic for everyday chores.
Seriously. Magic for cleaning?
Pretty much. And she just dives in. Amazingly, by her second week, she's mastered a whole bunch of these spells. And get this, wandlessly.
No wand. Just
Yeah.
does them.
Yeah, shows she still has that raw talent, that innate connection to mana. Just needs a different application.
So what kind of stuff can she do now, besides enchanted brooms?
Okay, think utility belt magic. Summoning basic light, like you said, a flashlight spell. Telekinesis for grabbing small things, projecting her voice over distance, shaping water,
Mm-hmm.
sucking up dirt, lighting fires, putting them out, even manipulating ropes and knots easily.
Huh? It sounds kind of mundane, but actually really useful day to day.
Immensely useful. Think how much time and effort that saves, and for Alice, this becomes the revelation.
What, that cleaning can be fun with magic?
Huh, maybe. But more that the best part about learning magic for her now isn't the big flashy stuff, it's stuff like this. The practical things that actually improve life.
That's a profound shift in perspective, finding satisfaction in the small things.
Totally. And that practicality immediately gets pointed towards their biggest problem.
The money, the debt.
Bingo. Turns out her new father, Charles Liddell, had this equipment and supply business, but he overextended himself massively. Their lab got seized, and they're literally facing eviction from their modest three-bedroom house.
So the debt isn't just numbers, it's about losing their home. Now,
Right now, it's urgent. So Alice starts racking her brain. How can she make money?
what does she come up with?
Well, her first ideas are a bit desperate, making little trinkets to sell, maybe, or even teaching swordsmanship.
Wait, swordsmanship? Can she even fight?
Doesn't sound like it. Lori apparently shoots that idea down fast. Probably not very profitable for her anyway.
Okay, so back to the drawing board.
Then she has her first real spark of practical invention. The Dungeoneer's paste.
Dungeoneer's paste. What's that?
It's pretty clever. A kind of silicone dust that mixes into a paste. Adventurers can press it onto runes or maps carved on walls or riddle clues in dungeons.
And it makes an imprint. Like clay.
Exactly. A perfect copy they can take with them. She takes it to the Adventurers Guild.
How does it go over?
They think it's niche, but nifty. Not a huge moneymaker maybe, but it's a start. It shows she's thinking differently, applying knowledge in a new way.
Okay, a small win, but probably not enough to save the house.
Probably not. But then comes a moment of pure accidental genius. It starts with something simple. A broken window.
A broken window leads to genius. Okay, I'm listening.
She needs to cover it up, right?
Yeah.
Improvising. She remembers this basic plant extraction spell she learned probably for getting components for potions or something.
Yeah.
But she thinks, what if I use it on something else? Like old socks.
Extracting. Sock essence.
Huh. Sort of. She uses the magic to basically break down the sock fibers and then reweaves them magically into a fine mesh.
No way.
Yes way. She creates a makeshift mosquito netting for the window. Just like that. Problem solved.
That's incredibly resourceful, using a plant spell on fabric.
But then Dinah, the cat girl, sees it, and she immediately gets it.
Gets what? That it keeps bugs out.
More than that, she connects it instantly to this big problem in the Uluman Republic, a swamp bite epidemic.
No.
Mosquito-borne illness, sounds like.
Ah.
Dinah realizes Alice, by just fixing a window with sock magic, has basically partially solved a major public health crisis.
Wow, so Alice's, modern world knowledge or problem-solving approach is actually revolutionary there.
Exactly, turning everyday stuff into something hugely valuable in this fantasy context.
So did she start mass-producing mosquito nets?
Well, that leads to the next big step. She needs a way to make things efficiently, and that brings her back to
Tarrant, the elf who tried to recruit her.
the very same. Turns out, despite his lack of social grace earlier, he's a brilliant inventor, a master craftsman.
Was his deal.
His workshop sounds amazing, totally steampunk. Think giant gears, steam pistons, huge vats.
Okay, proper mad scientist vibes.
Totally. There's even a garish-looking metal toffat on the roof, and inside, all sorts of noisy, strange machines, including the main event, a magic replication thing.
A magic replicator, like Star Trek.
Kind of. It's got this big crystal sphere at its core. It's basically a magical factory. Uses magic to mass-produce items from raw materials.
Okay, that's a game changer.
Huge. So Alice goes to him. She's got the ideas, tents, ropes, lanterns, more netting, and she has access to the raw materials. Remember her dad's failed business?
He left behind unsold stuff.
Loads of it. Raw minerals, crystals, gems, stuff Terrence's machine can use. So they partner up.
Alice provides the concepts and materials. Tarrant provides the magical mass production.
Exactly. His petite factory, as they call it, lets Alice crank out a ridiculous amount of easy-to-make staples inexpensively.
So she goes from broke amnesiac to industrialist.
Pretty much. A major supplier for the whole adventuring community. It's an incredible turnaround, all based on seeing needs and figuring out practical, magical solutions, not combat spells.
That's brilliant. Okay, so she's found her niche. She's making money. What happens next?
Well, the world keeps turning. The Adventurers Guild announces this huge dungeon crawling expedition, like 200 adventurers involved, big deal.
Led by who?
A guild representative named Balthazar, and it's pitched as this amazing chance for, glory and riches.
But I sense a butt coming.
You sense correctly. Hi-Hob, the rabbit man, he's much more cynical. He calls it a suicide mission for a lot of the less experienced adventurers going along.
Oof. Is there, like, hazard pay?
There's apparently insurance if you die, which tells you a lot about the risks involved.
Yeah, that's grim. So does Alice's group join this expedition?
They do. Lori, Tarrant, Dina, Haya, Dodgson, they all form an official party with Alice.
And they need a cool party name, right?
Of course. Lori suggests All in a Golden Afternoon.
All in a golden afternoon. Why does that ring a bell?
It seems to resonate deeply with Alice, maybe connecting to faint echoes of her past or just the sense of wonder she's starting to find. It feels right.
And Alice's role in this dungeon crawl. Is she backline support?
Even more fundamental than that, she is the support. She's not there to fight monsters directly. She's the one-girl petite factory, keeping the entire expedition supplied.
Providing the tents, the ropes, the paste, the netting,
Yeah.
all that stuff she's making with Tarrant.
Exactly. She's become absolutely essential, but in a completely non-combat role. Her value is her ingenuity and production capability.
That's fantastic. And how's the team dynamic now? Tarrant being less awkward.
It seems like they've really gelled, despite Terrence's earlier issues, and Dinah may be making too many puns.
Huh. There's always one.
Right. But there's this real sense of camaraderie, of mutual support. Dodgson, the Birdman, voices his admiration for Alice's curiosity.
That's nice.
And Lori really emphasizes that they're all there to help Alice, not just survive, but figure things out, relearn magic if she wants, and crucially, solve the mystery of her lost memories.
So they're invested in her personally,
Yeah,
not just as a supplier.
definitely. They're becoming her found family. And there's another layer, too. It comes out that Lori's parents are missing.
Ah, so adventuring isn't just about fighting monsters for her either. There's a personal quest there.
Adds another level of motivation for the group, yeah.
So where does this leave Alice internally? How is she feeling about all this now?
It's a huge shift from the beginning.
Yeah.
She reflects on how refreshing the energy of this group is. She feels like, with these people here, I really felt like I could get through it.
That's really hopeful, from total terror and isolation to feeling like she can manage.
It's a complete transformation. Acceptance of the new reality, finding strength in new connections, and carving out her own unique place.
What an incredible journey. Alice's story, it's just such a powerful reminder, isn't it? That sometimes losing, well, seemingly everything,
Yeah.
it can actually push you to find something truer, maybe, something more resilient within yourself.
Absolutely. She goes from this high-powered mage, suddenly powerless and lost in a new body, totally terrified,
Right.
to becoming this incredibly resourceful inventor, this vital linchpin for a whole group of heroes. She found her footing, and more than that, she started changing the world around her in her own way.
This whole deep dive into her story, it really shows that strength isn't always about, flashy power or fighting ability.
So true. It can be about adaptability, about ingenuity, and just having the guts to build connections when you feel most alone.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe, for you listening. What if the things we lose, or the things we think are weaknesses, what if they're actually the starting point for something completely unexpected?
Like the catalyst for our most unique contributions.
Exactly. What new kinds of magic, or maybe innovation, or purpose could you discover in your own life if you looked beyond what you think your limits are?